Press the button. All right, OBS shows our faces, so that is a good thing. And let me just double it's afternoon for you and me. So good afternoon, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I can't complain. I really can't complain. I got a haircut this morning, so I feel refreshed. I don't have that bushy hair going anymore, so it's good. The
Looking good.
beard's a little trimmer, so yeah, good times, good times.
Nice.
Oh,
Gravitated towards Ohio State football. And back, 20 years ago, that Michigan Ohio State rivalry was really good and it was a lot of fun every year.
right.
Now it's just not that much fun anymore. We just dominate it may be called the Big Ten, but it's really the 110.
Well,
So
it's the Big Ten with I want to say 15 or 16 teams now, and you've got the Big
yeah,
12 that has like 7 teams in it. So I don't understand anymore. It's
people are moving
probably
to
fine.
different conferences every time. I don't know
Yeah,
what's going
and
on
then they get
anymore.
sued for moving, and then maybe you did something that's not cool here, and yeah, it's all about chasing apparently the cable money. I know that was
Yep,
part of the Big Ten's realignment, right? Is we want to
yep,
pull in
for
some of these
sure.
East Coast schools as the
Yep.
noted rivalry with the Terps. So yeah, yeah, checks out, checks out.
Yep. But yeah, we're right around the corner from college football. I'm excited. I always enjoy college football in general, but it also does kind of signify that summer's kind of coming to an end, which
Yeah,
I never like either.
no,
So it's, which one are you?
I'm just not a winter fan.
Yeah, no, fall I'm good with.
Fall's fine. Fall's fine. It's this other. The snow is not my thing. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
And you and I are kind of in the same boat, Ohio, Minnesota, although you're one of the few people that I can talk to that say that probably has it worse than us.
Yeah, no, that is fair. And being here in as I jokingly refer to as Southern Canada, we definitely have more exposure to the cold and the snow than other people do. I get a kick out of when folks complain about, oh, it's really chilly, and it's like we got into the 40s. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
Well,
It's
that's
cold.
warm.
Right, right. Yeah,
I
I'd
would
take
put some
that.
shorts on.
It is funny how that works. As a Minnesotan, you get kind of used to wearing shorts even when the weather maybe isn't. And there's always, we had a vicious cold snap a couple years ago, and there was a student at the University of Minnesota who was still wearing shorts on campus. And so, of course, the local paper stopped him and interviewed him. And the guy's like, please don't use my last name. I don't want my mom to know, And it's like, it's literally 25 below zero. You really shouldn't be wearing shorts, but, it's fine. It's fine. To each their
It's
own.
funny how, yeah, it's funny how you get like accustomed to being in a particular place.
Right.
When I was young, I moved out to San Francisco to join a startup. And I moved out around October. It was probably like 55, 60 degrees. October in Cleveland is not that nice. So
Mm-mm.
I get down there and I'm like wearing shorts. I have a t-shirt on. I see people bundled up in parkas and I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is great weather.
Now, in fairness, San Francisco is a damp cold.
It's really cold there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's all
I got
relative.
I got invited to a beach party when I first moved there. And I was like, I was like, oh, great. I wear my swimming trunks. I have a shirt on. I get down there. Everybody's at the beach, like fire going. Everybody's bundled up. I'm like, it's not the beach party I was
Right,
expecting in San
right.
Francisco. So yeah, you live and learn.
That is very true. That is very true. Well, let's do the origin story. So tell us how you got into this weird industry that we share. How did you decide to start playing with computers, and then we'll
Yeah.
dive into the poster behind you of your homeland there.
All right. So yeah, I just had a birthday. I just turned
Happy birthday.
43. Thank you so much. So I've been doing this since basically high school. I got my first computer out of high school. Now remember, I'm an old man now, so this is not the same as it is now. Not everybody had a computer in their house. 1996, the year I graduated, the internet was really just kind of coming into its own. Um, and I got interested in computers right out of high school. As soon as I had my first computer, things broke. I was able to like fix it. The next computer I had, this was at a time when we were all kind of building our own computers, and I just really fell in love with having the creativity to kind of put a computer together and then tell it what to do.
Right.
And, I fell into I watched like the hackers movies and all those things. And I just like, wow, software developers are like really cool. Like they have this, like, you just kind of create something out of nothing. And I was never like an artist. So I didn't have the right. So I didn't have like any of those talents, but like I liked being creative. So,
right.
so I started kind of learning software on my own. And then I decided to go to a 2-year technical school, kind of like it's called Remington College. It's kind of like an ITT tech type place where it really like just took my like interest in programming and like kicked it up a notch. Like, yep, this is exactly what I want to be doing.
Yep.
I want to keep doing this. So I got out of school. I got back in those days, there were these like Yahoo chat rooms. I ended up booking a gig on there to build an e-commerce site. So I've built nothing before. This 19-year-old kid is now in charge of a, $15,000 e-commerce site that needs to get stood up for a large retailer. And I'm like, oh, we can do this. Me and my buddy did it. He did like the back end of it. I did kind of the front end shopping cart part. And in a month, we whipped it together and it worked out great. So I really got interested in that. I had a friend, I can't remember how we actually met, but he was the CEO of a startup in San Francisco called Five9, which just got bought by Zoom.
Cool.
A really big company now. I was the 7th employee in that company, decided to move out to San Francisco for a couple of years. And I did a lot of like chat support with them. I, interfaced with customers and then the engineers building the software, which was built in Java at the time. It used like Java Web Start.
Sure.
We were a voice over IP company, kind of call center software. And just got really interested in that. I maintained our corporate website, which at the time was Java and Struts. So if there's any Struts developers out there, you'll know my pain.
Dating ourselves now.
Yes. So that was kind of where I started.
Sure.
I was living in San Francisco for 2 years. Well, right outside of Berkeley, actually. Our first office was in Emeryville, California. So I was in Oakland, right by the Berkeley border there, which is a really great area, by the way. And I was paying a lot of money to rent a house with 4 or 5 other people. And I thought I was making pretty good money at the time,
right.
but cost of living in San Francisco is just astronomical as it is today. And I just decided that this was fun. I had my fun out here. I learned a bunch of things. I miss my friends. I miss my family. I miss affordable housing. I'm going to move back to Ohio. So I did that, found a gig, coming back as a software developer. Pretty much from then, till a couple of years ago, I had various roles where I was a software developer, a senior software developer, just worked in a variety of industries. Kind of got to a point where, let me back up a little. Then I got into a point where, I've been, I think from the beginning of time for me, I've been someone who likes to teach. So even in that first job at Five9, one of the things I did was I wrote technical documentation, or I created screencasts before YouTube was even really a thing, to kind of illustrate how to use our software, because I got tired of answering the same questions. I'm like, you want to learn? Just go read this or watch this. And so early on, I started a blog too, because it gave me like a real world project to work on. And again, I felt like there, at that time, there weren't a lot of people like teaching others like how to do something. And I felt like as a beginner, I had a really good insight into like pain points and how you can solve these problems. So I've been blogging for probably 15 years now. Got into YouTube a few years ago. And then as Udemy started growing, I thought, I really have something here. Let me back up on Udemy. So I went to Spring One, probably 2016 was my first Spring One. And I had just heard about Spring. I've done Spring development with classic Spring framework. And I just learned about Spring Boot. And I was like, wow, this is like a game changer. Not enough people are talking about this yet. I'm going to learn this and I'm going to create a course on basics, because that'll give me, as a beginner into this, I can kind of take that knowledge and reiterate that to anybody else who's a
Yep.
beginner. So I created my first course on Udemy. Still my most popular course. The video quality is terrible. It's just not good, but the content is always kind of the most important part. It had good content. Now I'm at probably eight courses on Udemy, and I have over 140,000 students worldwide,
Wow.
which is pretty cool.
That is awesome.
And yeah, I've just kind of built, every course that I've made, every video that I make on YouTube kind of gets a little bit better and better. So I really enjoyed I've always enjoyed the teaching aspect. So a couple of years ago, I kind of got burnt out with software development, and I'm just like, man, I really love this teaching thing. Locally, there's a boot camp called Tech Elevator that was just kind of getting off the ground, and I decided to join them as a curriculum developer. And I really got an opportunity to put like my kind of imprint on the curriculum and say, like, this is what we should be teaching, this is how we should be teaching it, and really working with both the instructors and what the students are looking for, so that, this is a 14-week boot camp. 14 weeks, students are in and out, and we're putting them right into the workforce. So what could we do in those 14 weeks to get them ready to be software developers?
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that part of it, and it really helped, technically writing. I've been a writer for a while now.
Right.
I think I learned a lot of things there as far as like writing documentation and curriculum. So that was cool. And then I really missed the kind of software development. I wanted to get back into it, and so I ended up taking a architect role with a company called Breebug at the beginning of this year. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We work with one of the largest logistics companies in the world, and we do a whole bunch of cool projects that are revolve around Spring Boot and Spring Cloud and microservices and a whole bunch of fun stacks. So that's kind of been my path to where I am today. I just enjoy problem solving. I don't think I enjoy, I don't code for 10 hours a day anymore.
Right.
Like I used to. I enjoy kind of being able to step back and take my 20 years of experience and go, here's what we can do here. Here's how we can solve that problem. I've seen this 1 million times.
Yep.
Let's do
Got the t-shirt. Yep. Know how that story ends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's in a nutshell what I've been up to.
It's funny you mentioned, I remember being in college and talking to my advisor, and I asked him, like, why did you decide to, because he'd been in industry for a bunch of years and then went back, got his PhD and started teaching. I said, what drew you down that path? And he said, I got tired of creating the same application again and again and again and again. He's like, basically all we do is put a front end on a relational database. And I'm like, yeah, and I didn't fully appreciate that at the time, but then you get into industry and you do 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 of those, and you're like, okay, yep, been there, done that. We might be changing out some of the implementation detail, but it's still kind of the same thing, and rinse, repeat, and you do eventually get a little tired of that. So.
Yeah, totally. But I think one of the other things that really interests me is, even over time, as you said, we've been building a lot of the same applications. The way we build them has gotten way better.
Yes.
I'm going to date myself again and say the very first website that I built was probably in Front Page and Dreamweaver. And
geez.
Those were the way.
Too soon, man. Too soon.
And you FTP some code up to a server somewhere. So the way that we build things has gotten so much better. And the introduction of things like GitHub has like really changed, the way that we learn from others, and open source software. I mean, those two things alone have really changed the landscape of software development.
You and I are of the era before Stack Overflow,
Yes.
and I, when you said before YouTube, I'm sure my child, I shouldn't say child, he's a young adult now. My teenager, I'm sure, must have done a double take, like, there was no life before YouTube. What are you talking about?
I know.
But I have reflected upon this, because I think Stack Overflow, I want to say, was like 2010, somewhere in that ballpark, if I remember right. So I wrote code before that. I somehow solved production problems before that, and I for the life of me don't know how. So
I don't either. Without GitHub, Stack Overflow, YouTube, courses. I mean, there were books. We read a lot of books when we were younger, but Yep. Well,
Yep.
but just to be able to get an answer on a whim, like you couldn't do that then.
Right.
It was
Right.
a lot harder. You could find any answer you need right now to any problem you have. So
That's a great point. I very distinctly remember having a bookshelf full of many O'Reilly books and others. I had, the Java in a Nutshell book when it was thin before it became, this giant tome that you couldn't, you had to have like special shipping. It was so heavy. But that gradually changed as more and more of these resources went online, and you're like, I don't really need to drag a bookshelf full of things with me to look this up. I just
right.
go online. And especially as things change more rapidly too, for a while things were fairly stable, at least on the front end, kind of. And then now it's like every few weeks it feels like something's different. But yeah,
Yep.
that has definitely changed how we approach this for sure.
Yep. I do. And I love like new things that I have shiny object syndrome. Like something new comes out, I have to play with it. And it's like I have FOMO, like, wait, why are these people talking about this thing? And I haven't
Right.
been able to use it yet. So I do have to like kind of remind myself that I don't need to try every new JavaScript framework out there. I can kind of step back a little, but
Yes. Yes.
I do enjoy that part. Just kind of all the new tech and new software that's coming out that makes being a programmer fun. So
Right. So speaking of that, what drew you into Spring, and what kind of got you fired up that you wanted to dive down that path?
so I so I'm gonna go back to kind of how I got started with web development. And people always grin when I say this, but I started web development using Cold Fusion. And so for me, Cold Fusion, again, I came from Struts. So
Right.
don't tell me that Cold Fusion is a bad thing, because uh, for me, Cold Fusion kind of gave me the ability to make a application or a website, and it made all the hard things easy. Like if you want to connect to a database, there's like one tag, and you write a
Right.
query and you get some data out, you loop over it and throw it on a page. If you want to send an email, if you want to build a graph, like these things were like so made easy for you. And so that's what kind of drew me into like Cold Fusion side of web development. And as I started getting into kind of, Groovy and Grails and Spring Framework, I really liked Spring Framework for that. That like you could build these like really robust applications on like anything that you're trying to build. Spring had an answer for you, but it wasn't easy. It was
Sure.
not fun to like start a project. Like you couldn't just kick up a new project. You had to go copy some template from somewhere, because I'm not writing, 20 XML files and all these, trying to remember all the tags for that. Like it got really hard. So I think once you got a project up and running, it was pretty
Sure.
easy in Spring. But just getting projects off the ground. And like I said, when I started like hearing about Spring Boot, and then when I was at Spring One that one year, being able to just see all the demos and start.spring.io, and like just being able to like kick off a project really quickly. Then, doing things like connecting to a database, sending an email, or standing up a web, a web MVC project. It just got so easy, and I was just like, yeah, that
Yeah.
I I like to focus on what I'm trying to create, not all the underlying infrastructure. And I'm glad there are so many smart people out there doing that for us.
Oh, totally agree. I remember a few years ago building some kind of demo or something, and remember just thinking how much easier this is now than it used to be. And I'm pretty sure my demo had more lines of JavaScript than it had Java. And I just
Yeah,
thought, this all used to be, we just have larger abstractions, more coarser grained abstractions. And I think that's, to me, part of what I find so amazing about the Spring team is their ability to recognize those instances and then remove that toil from us. And,
yeah,
it just makes it simpler and less
yeah,
for us to worry about, and more just, all right, go solve the business problem and we'll
yeah,
wire it together for you. But
yeah.
yeah, I think you appreciate it more when you had to do it the hard way.
Yes. Which is, why I appreciate a lot of, I've never been a really good like designer or front end developer, but it's always interested me. Like I've always found it fascinating. Like I want to create this visually appealing thing, not
Mm-hmm.
just something that kind of works. So I've always kind of tried to get better at it. And back in the day, it was like really, really hard. Like
Right.
we didn't have, first off, we had to deal. We talked about this last week, I think, but we had to deal with IE6, which was never
Yes.
fun. And then there were just so many ways to do things that weren't easy. Now you have tools like CSS Grid and Flexbox, like to lay things out on the front end. It's so easy. I'm a big fan of a framework called Tailwind right now, which allows me to quickly like prototype something out and make it look nice. So the tools that I have to be able to do something that I am interested in, but not that great in,
Right.
has really made it so much better. So I was just remembering do you remember the 1 pixel spacer gifts we had to add in like the tables?
As soon as you started talking about layout, I immediately had a flashback to tables within tables within tables and
Yeah,
turning on borders and let's make that one red and let's make that one blue and let's make that one yellow. And then you're like, okay, why isn't this laying out properly?
right.
And I also very distinctly remember kind of right as CSS was starting to mature, there was actually a website that somebody had put together that says, should I use tables? And you pressed start and it was a 45-minute countdown. And then at the end of 45 minutes, it said, did you get it to work with CSS? No, then just use tables. So
Right.
yeah, back in my day.
I know. I do feel like I'm getting to that point where I'm just like, you kids got it so easy these days.
Well, I mean, there is a little bit of that, right? I mean, and I'm sure when we were starting out in our career, there were some folks who said the same thing about us, you whippersnappers.
Yeah.
So it's just it's the circle of life, right?
Yeah. I always think about that big, I don't know if you've seen that picture where they're wheeling in the computer into the side of that brick building and it's just this huge thing. And then
Yep.
somebody put up a cell phone next to it and like
Yep.
this one has more power than
Yeah.
that thing did.
Well, I remember being in like our network admin's office when I was in college, and our VAX at the time was called Tiny because it was only the size of like a washing machine instead of the other one that was the size of a room. And of course
Right.
now it's just like you're kidding me, right? I mean, and it's just amazing how much has changed in that short amount of time. My son starts high school this week, and at his high school they're issued school owned MacBook Air for the year,
Nice.
and it's
That's
kind of
awesome.
like, yeah, I remember when I was in school we didn't have that. We had to lug books with us everywhere, and it's just it's a very different sort of mindset.
But you did have Oregon Trail, Nate.
Well,
You did
you
have
you
that in the
know that
library.
that's out on iOS, right? I've
I did not.
played more than my fair share of Oregon Trail, and there's a card game version of Oregon Trail, which I
That's
have
awesome.
played many times, and it basically amounts in you've died of dysentery. I'm sorry. So comes the territory. But yeah, I played quite a bit of that on iOS when it first came out. It has a very good feel, and it's
Nice.
yeah, some reminiscence to say the least. But yeah, that so for the kids out there, that used to be the computer lab time for folks of our vintage was be to go to the library and play Oregon Trail on aged probably what Apple IIe's or something like that.
Yep,
And yeah, it was good times. Good times.
definitely.
So we got to circle back to Cleveland, and I'm not gonna make the butt of any jokes. That's not fair. What?
Heard them all.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I
doesn't
mean, I feel your pain because I'm a Minnesotan, born, bred, and raised, and Minnesota sports, other than the Lynx, who I think just win every year. I don't know. I mean, they've got more championships. They're like the Tom Brady of the WNBA, near as I can tell. My Vikings in my entire lifetime, I don't think they've been in the Super Bowl, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So how is it to be a Cleveland sports fan, knowing that I can absolutely relate with you? At least your basketball team has won some games. The Timber Chihuahuas seem incapable of that.
Well, I could say for most of my life it has been miserable. Because I am a Indians fan, I'm a Browns fan, I'm a Cavs fan, diehard Cleveland sports fan. I so let's start off with the Indians. I went through the '90s when Cleveland arguably had one of the best teams every year for 3 or 4 years
Yep.
there and just couldn't get it done. I still remember Jose Mesa. It hurts for me to even say his name because we should have won that series. So
Yeah.
I was actually at a couple of those games in the outfield, so I remember the World Series. Even as of recent, we should have won the 2016 World Series against the Cubs. We were up 3-1. Trevor Bauer, by the drone, just couldn't wait to fly a drone for another couple months.
Right.
We just had everything go wrong in that series at the end there. I mean, it was a memorable Game 7 for sure. Probably one of the best Game 7s of all time, but came out on the losing end of that one too. So yeah, big Indians fan. Cavs, thankfully, LeBron, Kyrie, they got it done. That was one of the best series that I've ever watched. And I can remember Game 7 like it was yesterday. A bunch of us went downtown. We started getting downtown at 2:00 for an 8:00 game. So
Wow.
It was just so crowded down
I bet.
there. And ended up finding a really great spot to watch the game with like 15 people. And probably partied for a week after that. So that was awesome to kind of end the drought.
Right.
Championships. But this is a Browns town. It will always be a Browns town. And funny enough, my dad was born in Denver. We moved out here when I was probably 2 years old. So he's a Broncos fan. He tried to raise me being a Broncos fan. And the rebellion that I am was like, nope, I'm a Clevelander, man. Cleveland's my team. And of course, Denver and Cleveland had those, infamous battles back in the day. And so I was on the losing end of those too. And then, since the Browns came back, if you're not aware, the Browns left Cleveland for Baltimore. So all those Baltimore championships are actually ours. Thank you very much.
Yep.
But then when we came back, we have not been good ever since. We have just the quarterback carousel, the wrong people in place, wrong coaches. I think, I'm hesitant to always say this, but I think they have found the right people. We took Kevin Stefanski from you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
That's worked out really well.
Yeah,
Coach of the year last year.
Yeah, it works so well for us, but that's okay. It's okay.
We're givers. High expectations this year for the Browns. A lot of people are using the Super Bowl word. I'm not going to go there yet. But they won a playoff game in Pittsburgh, which we haven't done in forever.
Big deal.
They are just a loaded roster. But loaded rosters don't win championships. So we got to see it in action. And we get Kansas City week 1, and then I'll be at the home opener in week 2. So, yeah. So, and I'm at the home opener in week 2, which is against Houston. Nice. We haven't won a home opener in 19 years or something.
Streak's gonna break, right? Maybe, hopefully.
Probably. So.
I can appreciate my team left and then won a championship, because every time I see anyone refer to the Dallas Stars, I just kind of have a bit of a visceral reaction. And I'm not even that much of a hockey fan, but it just blows my mind that you can relocate a hockey franchise from the state of hockey to Texas.
Right.
Now this last year with the cold snap and the blizzard and the whatever they had down there with all the power outages notwithstanding, they don't get a lot of ice. And it just made me a little grumpy that they relocated and then win a Stanley Cup. But, that's our lot in life, I guess. So.
Yeah. But yeah, mostly miserable for the better half of 20 years, but I've had some highlights, and hopefully this will be another one.
Well, I hope
I'll always be a fan.
I hope you found the quarterback finally. I do get a kick out of somebody got a mannequin and put the first quarterback from the reinstated franchise, and then just kept tacking the names on of every other quarterback since. And it's lengthy.
That's funny. It's on the so we have a street called West 6th here, which leads you down to the stadium. And it's right on the corner. So if you're coming into the game, you always see that mannequin. Just a subtle reminder of all the quarterbacks we've gone through.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating how that works. But
I love this city, given the picture back here.
Yeah.
Well, I love it here.
I think as a fellow Midwesterner, there are some misplaced attitudes about the Midwest, you know, and I think there's some
Hmm.
folks who just have this opinion that, oh, it's always cold there, or there's no culture there, or no one lives there. You know,
Right.
I had a friend of mine who when his daughter got married, the spouse's family was all from Pacific Northwest, and they came here for the wedding stuff, and they're just like, we had no idea it's so beautiful here. It's like, well, why do you think millions of people live here? You know, it isn't
Yeah.
just because we were born here, you know. So it's
We get
fascinating
the
how that
same
works.
thing. Anybody who actually visits Cleveland is like, oh, it's so nice there. I
Yeah.
don't know why you'd ever, you know, and I have the same feeling towards Minneapolis. Back in my cold fusion days and even groovy days, I've spent many a time there at conferences.
Yep.
And I just loved being in downtown Minneapolis. So many great restaurants right there. We went to Target Field.
Oh yeah.
Target Field is probably one of my top three baseball
Yeah,
fields,
it's
and
awesome.
and it's just a great place to watch a game. So, yeah, I get it. I've heard it all. You know, the one thing I don't get is people always start with it's really cold there. Like, not taking away from Chicago or New York, who are, I
Right.
mean, they're two of the greatest cities in the world.
Right.
But like, it's really cold there too. You don't
Right.
start off with that when you mention
Right.
Chicago.
Right. Well, and to your point, the weather in London isn't always wonderful either, and people still live there. You know, there's
Right.
unless you live in San Diego, the weather's going to not be pleasant part of the year. So
Exactly.
yeah, you just and I mean, I don't know how your summer's been, but it's basically been hot and humid the entire summer here. So
Same here. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that we get to appreciate summers more because we go
100%
through
agree.
those winter months.
Yep, 100% agree. 100% agree. But well, I mean, I like your odds better this fall than the Vikings. So, you know, I suspect you're going to have a better football season than us, is my expectation, especially with Aaron Rodgers coming back to the Green Bay Packers. I was really hoping
Well,
he would just go be Jeopardy's host, but,
yeah.
you know, that wasn't going to
Well,
happen.
we
Oh, maybe
do
now,
we
but
we do visit Minnesota this year, so maybe I'll make the trip down.
enjoy. Feel free. You know, I'll make you pizza. It'll be good. So let's see, where do I want to go next? Let's talk a bit about, I know, kind of circle back on spring. Speaking of spring, we have spring one coming up. I think if my mind is right, next week. I don't know. Time has so little meaning to me during this pandemic, but I'm pretty sure it's next week if my
Yep.
memory is straight. And I'm delighted to say you're going to be joining us this year. What are you going to be talking about?
Yeah, so I'm talking about full stack development with Spring One and Vue.
Ooh,
So it's something I already told you kind of what I love about Spring. And I think on the front end, it's the same thing. So Vue kind of empowers me to use a JavaScript framework that is really easy to get up and running with and does all the things that I needed to do. So I'll come back to Tech Elevator, the boot camp I helped, write the curriculum at. We introduced Vue as the framework that we are going to teach. And this decision was made right before I got there, but it just makes so much sense. And, you know, when picking a JavaScript framework, they had to like figure out, okay, which one are we going to teach? Knowing that like, hopefully we're teaching concepts here. So if you leave here and you know Vue, you should be able to jump over to Angular, React, whatever. So which one do we pick? So with Angular, we just didn't have time to also teach TypeScript alongside JavaScript because
sure.
you kind of need to know TypeScript with Angular. So that was an easy one to say, we just can't get into that. There's not enough time. Again, we're limited to 14 weeks. React, very popular, but they just learned HTML and JavaScript and CSS. And seeing JSX is probably going to like throw them into one of those infinity loops
Sure,
going, what
sure,
am I
sure.
doing? So we kind of went with Vue, and I think it was a really great choice because, so from one standpoint, Vue is the only framework that I know might be able to do this with some of the newer ones, but you can drop a CDN on a current page and just start to add a little bit of front end styling or interactivity to it without having to rewrite your whole application in some like new tooling or etc. So
Sure.
that that is one of the things I'm going to kind of point out in my presentation is that like, hey, if you have this huge app, and like there's one page that you want to do something to, you don't need to rewrite it using some whole front end framework. You can just drop a tag on there and do a couple things in that page. And that's really a great introduction to other team members to say, hey, this is a great tool for us. Let's see if we can use it more. But yeah, it's been the same thing as Spring. Like, it just makes everything so easy to do. Documentation is like really, really good. And that's important if you're trying to get, be self-sufficient. And, I've just enjoyed the ecosystem kind of the same way as Spring, like
Sure.
great people, great, everybody's friendly, willing to help. So I think they are a really good pair. But I think, my hope is there might be a whole bunch of Spring One developers there who maybe have not jumped into Vue. And so it'll be my chance to give you like a quick introduction to what it is. And we're going to talk about, again, being able to just add some interactivity to a page. Then we'll jump into more full stack stuff. Like, what if I want an entire application that uses Vue on the front end and Spring on the back end? We'll kind of show two flavors of that, which is really depending on like how your team makeup is.
Right.
In one way, you can write an entire application, so you have a single deployable jar. So all of your front end code is in your Spring project. A Maven dependency kind of puts it all together for you, puts it in that static folder, and then your jar is built. So now you can just have this one jar, deploy that somewhere, and you have that whole application ready to go. Maybe you have a front end team who's solely working on, the front end JavaScript, and you're on the Spring side, and what are some things that you need to take care of? So things like cores, or how do you secure APIs? The things that you need to think about when different clients are calling you. So, and I really like that last approach, because if you have a client here on the web calling you, you can now set it up for maybe a mobile app to call you as well. So I'm just going to kind of cover all of those scenarios, and like I said, hopefully introduce a lot of Spring developers to Vue who haven't had an introduction to it yet.
Yeah, that always seems to be a good way to, much like you can go into Columbus and say something about Michigan football. You really want to get a group of developers, sort of worked up. You can just say, well, I hear Vue's better than React, or
Yeah.
React is better than Angular, or Angular's better than Vue, and just watch what happens. It's an amusing way to watch people get very dogmatic about their choice of UI framework.
Yeah, you know what? So I have a question for you, and I have my own thoughts on this. Do you find that people are much more defensive or want to be more opinionated about a particular language or framework if they're younger than they are older? Because I feel like I had that very same mentality 20 years ago, whereas now I'm like, I have preferences, but like they're all just a tool to complete a job. So
yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Dan, that we tend to be very attached to a language, framework, etc. when we're younger. Part of it is an identity thing. Like, I'm a blank developer, and as you gain more experience, you start to realize it's just a tool. And to your point, you might like one hammer a little better than another, but you'll use the right hammer for the job in front of you. And that does take some experience. I mean, it is one of the benefits of being in the industry for more than a few months. You've seen some of these problems before, and you've probably tried doing it the hard way. You've tried to use the wrong tool, and now you realize, well, okay, this would have been a lot simpler if I would have just used the right tool, even though it wasn't my favorite. But you also, I think, with experience, this is one of my favorite interview questions, is try to pull out of people, what do you love about this thing? And that's cool, but what do you hate about it? Like, where's the rough edge that you want buffed off? Give me some of those things that annoy you. And if you don't have that, that tells me you haven't worked with it very long, because every tool, language, framework, they got something in it where you're like, God, why haven't they fixed this yet?
That's funny. Yeah, we asked that about Java. What's your favorite thing about Java? What's your least favorite thing about Java? And when people can't rattle off a few things they don't like about Java, you're right. I'm like, well,
you probably don't know it as well as you think you do.
Right. And that's no knock on Java. I mean, it's been around so long. So
no, I mean, I've built almost my entire career around Java. I've written more Java than I care to admit, architected plenty of Java apps, but there's still things in the language I'd change. There's still things that could be done better. I have bent Keynote up, down, left, and right. It's my favorite presenting tool, but I can give you a list of things that annoy me. and that to me is an indication of experience that you've actually used it and you've gone beyond the to-do list hello world example to find where the edge of the map is, where are the dragons.
Yeah.
And that to me is a great differentiator when you're interviewing someone. Obviously, if right out of school that doesn't work, but somebody who's been in our industry for a couple of years, you should start to have some of those opinions. And
Yeah.
I think your other point about that is when you've done this longer, you also gain a little more humility, I think, because
Hmm.
you've experienced some things that didn't maybe end as well as you'd like. And we all
Yep.
start to appreciate sort of the limits of our knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one that I'm actually building out this software engineering fundamentals curriculum right now, and that's a huge part of the message I'm trying to get across is be pragmatic and don't get too attached to a tool or a database or a language. Learn it for sure, but don't be afraid to learn something that's outside of that. And there's applicability there too. You mentioned Groovy earlier, and learning Groovy will change the way you write Java. Even if you don't get to
Yeah,
write Java, write Groovy on the job, it'll still change the way you write Java.
for sure. Yeah. Groovy is a really great language. Yeah, probably been, oh man, how long have I done Groovy now? Probably 6, 7 years, 7, 8 years, somewhere around there. I actually have a course on Groovy fundamentals. I've learned a lot of Groovy from our good friend Ken Cousin,
Yep.
who has taught Groovy for as long as I can remember it. Um, so yeah, just a big fan of language and solved. I think going back to my theme, makes hard things easy.
Yeah.
Before Java had lambdas, before Java went into this 6 month release cycle and really started improving things. Groovy for me was doing all of those things and just made a lot of the hard things easy. So
Right.
if you haven't noticed, Nate, I'm a lazy software
Yeah.
developer.
You should be. The best software engineers are lazy, and there's
Yeah.
no reason to reinvent the wheel. If there's a simpler way, by gosh, you should take it. But I remember when I first kind of started playing around with Groovy, that was my experience. That it removed some of the noise, the clutter that Java had accumulated at that point. And I will
Yep.
never forget. I had a summer intern, and I had him work with some Groovy stuff, and he was whipping stuff together, and took everything I gave him 3 or 4 levels further than he needed to. And one of my colleagues had a summer intern too, and whatever project he was working on, I asked my intern, I said, "Do you think you could re-implement that in Groovy?" And he did it in about 2 days. This thing that took that guy almost a month, and it did more, and it had more features. And it's like, we might just want to see where this could be useful for us, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was an interesting
Yeah,
experience.
especially building out graphs of like an XML graph or a JSON graph, or that those builders that I had right from day
Yeah,
one were really useful.
yeah, that was some spiffy stuff to say the least.
Yep.
Oh, well, so let's switch gears a little bit. So other than Pine for your sports teams, what do you do for hobbies? How do you enjoy yourself outside of banging on computers?
So I have a now 1 year old who just turned one about a week ago, and a 3 year old. So we went through a pandemic, pregnant,
Oh my.
having to deal with all that, having a baby last August,
Ouch.
and yeah, and being stuck in the house with two kids, two small kids,
Right.
and working from home.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd say all the hobbies I had are now gone,
Yes.
and they're kind of focused in on two little kids right now,
Hmm.
which is great. I mean, they're amazing. I love the two little girls. My 1 year old is Juliana. My 3 year old is Isabella, and they're just awesome. They're so much fun to be around. At the same time, working from home and being around kids all
Right.
day long is
Right.
tough sometimes. So, when we can, we try and get out of the house. We just took a vacation to Florida, which was awesome. Went down to Sandestin. Beautiful beaches down there. If you've never been, great place to visit. But it's hopefully things are going to start to slow down. My 3 year old is going into preschool, so hopefully, like I said, they'll start to get into some more activities here. So I've been big into weightlifting and running.
Yeah.
So big time. I CrossFitted for probably 8 years until, last time I was in a gym was when the pandemic started though.
Sure.
So I've been back. Just because when that started, I just took up running more. I've always loved running. So I run and do home workouts right now just because it's probably easier than going to a gym.
Right.
So yeah, I'm big into fitness. I don't know. I think, and my hobbies are software. So when I have time, I have, like I said, I do a lot of teaching on the side. So
Yeah.
I build out courses. I've done some work for O'Reilly. I'm doing, building a presentation for Spring One right now. So yeah, I enjoy working on that stuff. I enjoy software when there's no deadline. When there's no deadline, it's a lot of fun. It's just like, hey, I'm just building this thing or hacking around on some new technology just to learn it. I enjoy doing that. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's such a universal for so many folks that get into this line of work is just that just playing around. I mean, for years, people would ask me what I do for a living, and I'm like, I play with computers because that was as close as any definition I could give most folks. And, it's always kind of stuck. But
Yeah.
boy, yeah, just so you know, the next 11 years are going to fly by, and you're going to be having to go to high school with that young lady. So just mentally prepare yourself now, because I don't know where 14 years went for me.
That's what everybody tells me. I don't believe it yet, but that's what everybody is told. So
Yeah.
going to two girls in high school terrifies me though. So I'm not rushing to get there.
It should. Yeah. No, that should. I already have enough pause with one boy being a freshman. So yeah. It's funny because, our phones now will give us those memories, on this day in, and it is remarkable to see how much change happens as kids go from like 8 to 12 to 14. I mean, the rate of change is a lot like what you see from 1 to 3, but
right.
Yeah, enjoy.
I am, when you get caught up in the day-to-days and the grind, like, me and my wife always tell each other, just, try and like take this in because as you said, it does fly. So we gotta keep reminding ourselves that like when things are stressful, like, hey, we're very blessed. We have a great job. We have a great house. We have a great family. So it's hard to in the day to day, but we try and do that as much as we can.
Yeah. No, I remember a couple nights like I really don't want to read whatever again, and it's like, well, this is going to end. And sure enough, just one night it just doesn't happen. He doesn't want to read. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to read myself tonight. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's the end of that. All right. Oh well. Do you have any advice you would give to your younger self if step 1, invent time machine, step 2, break the space-time continuum?
Oh my God, there's a laundry list probably.
Invest in Apple stock.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
AWS.
Don't buy pizza with Bitcoin.
Right.
That guy was. Yeah, no, I think I really have no regrets from the software world because I think everything's kind of been a teaching moment. I wish I would have gotten into like teaching and content creation a little bit earlier.
Sure.
So more or less when YouTube was starting and the course platforms were just coming out, because I think maybe in a perfect world that's what I'd be doing all day every day.
Sure.
And it's really hard to kind of just drop everything and do that when you're a little bit older and have kids at home.
My cat says hi, by the way. He's apparently decided he'd like to be in on this interview here, but now he's tangled around on my cords. This is Han.
Han.
Yep, Han and Chewy.
Nice.
Because we have two cats, we have to name them after some kind of. Are you going to settle in and be part of this, or are you going to keep, getting in the way? No, you can't sit on the keyboard, goofball. We've had that conversation before. Sorry about that.
No worries. But yeah,
the joy of working from home.
I think professionally, I wouldn't really change much. I've worked my butt off to get to where I am, and so I don't think I really would have changed any of that because it's been a great learning experience. Now, just self in general, I would say take care of yourself a little bit
Yeah.
better, mentally and physically. Nothing is worth getting, drained for. You only have one body, you only have one mind. Those are the two most important things. So try and keep that in perspective as you're going through life. There's nothing more important than that.
Yeah.
So
Great advice. Is there anything you've been like streaming or reading or watching that's kind of been helping you get through the pandemic? Anything you've sort of picked up, over the last? I mean, the timeline keeps getting longer. 18 months now, 20 months. I don't know.
yeah. So I'm not a huge. Well, I like TV. As far as we have a Netflix account. I'm not a big TV fan though. I just there are shows that I've watched. Um, but I just find myself not having time to invest in shows. Like
Yes.
a new show comes out, and I'm just like, oh, I want to watch that, but I just don't want to get like hooked into it. Um,
Because
I'm
to be
think,
fair, some of
I'm,
them are real commitments.
yeah.
If you're
Well, I
gonna
was a Game of Thrones fan, obviously.
absolutely,
Yeah, that was a commitment. So
yeah, yeah,
uh, that's the last real TV commitment I've had. It's ruined me for all other shows.
yeah. It's hard. I mean, Christine and I watched Battlestar Galactica over the winter, and I did not fully realize just how many hours of content I was signing up for. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult too because some of these are worth a rewatch, but then you start thinking, well, if I rewatch that, that's 6 or 7 seasons of how many episodes each an hour, and you start going, whoa, that
Right.
blocks out time to do new things or literally anything else. Although I have to put in my obligatory Ted Lasso plug. I really should get them to sponsor because I'm a huge fan. Let's invade France. So there's a
I have
reference to
not
this
seen an
week's
episode
episode.
of that yet,
Okay,
but
well, when we're done here,
I do have Apple Plus Music.
there you go.
So
Then you
TV, so
absolutely it's not as it's no Game of Thrones level commitment. We're talking what 10 half-hour shows for season 1, and I think 5 or 6 of season 2 is out so far. So
all right.
we've watched season 1 3 times, and I know we'll watch season 2 multiple times too as well. So and then probably
Cool.
just do it
Yeah.
all the way through because of course.
Well, that's good. Maybe I'll give that a shot.
All right. Well, I hope you do. And there now I've met my quota of Ted Lasso comments, but yes, let's invade France. So what?
Yeah, funny enough, if I'm watching stuff, I'm a software junkie. I watch a lot of YouTube.
Sure.
I watch courses. I have an O'Reilly subscription,
Yep.
so I'm always watching stuff over there, reading books over there.
Well, feel free to put any of my things on repeat in the background, or Ken's things, or Neil's, or there's lots of options.
Spring for Architects. Was able to check that out a week or so ago.
I think Jakob and I are doing a variant of that next week for Spring 1, if I remember right. I'm pretty sure we got tapped on the shoulder for that, so we'll have to figure that out. But
yeah, I'm a knowledge junkie. I love to learn. I just need more of it. Like when they invent that chair from the Matrix, we can just sit back, plug in.
Yes.
I'm going to be first in line.
I need to know how to fly a helicopter.
Right.
Yeah, that would be handy. There's no getting around it. So it'd be nice. Or what was it, Demolition Man, where when they put the criminals under, they were making them watch skills that were hopefully going to make them more normal, like knitting or something. I thought Stallone's character knitted or something like that. But yeah. Oh, good Lord. Is there any restaurant you're dying to get back to? Any place that you're excited about, visiting, eating? And I miss the travel, to be honest with you. I miss some of these cool cities I get to hang out in. Any place you're excited about getting back to?
Yeah, so my wife and I finally got to a restaurant for our anniversary in July. That was our first one since, a year and a half.
Yeah.
We went to I love a good steakhouse.
Yes.
So give me a really good steak, a nice bourbon drink, and I'm in heaven. So a couple of my favorite steakhouse that I've ever eaten at was Boa in Los Angeles, and it was probably one of my favorite steaks of all time. So anytime I can get to a good steakhouse in any city, please send me your recommendations. That's where I'd like to go.
All right. All right. Well, if you come visit, then I change my mind. I won't make you pizza. I'll make you steaks. We have my buddy Paul let me know there is a amazing butcher not that far from my house that has Wagyu. And the plus
Nice.
side of that is I've eaten some very, very good steaks this summer. The downside is it's also very expensive. So
Yes.
my food budget has taken a hit, to say the least.
Yep.
But so worth it, you know.
Hasn't everybody's since the pandemic? Is it just us? Like we spend a lot on.
Well, it's I because it's like the thing we can still do.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but during the pandemic, a whole lot more restaurants started showing up on DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like
Yeah.
that. And so it's been a lot easier to do that. And we find ourselves doing that maybe once a week. And I don't think we went out
Yeah.
to eat once a week before, you know, so it's
Right.
interesting how that sort of changed some habits. But
It was great when they, I don't know about there, but around here we started being able to order drinks too. So we get
yes,
Mexican one night and they had 2 margaritas thrown
margaritas,
onto
please.
there.
Yeah, I
So
think it's
yeah.
going to be interesting to see what sort of normal looks like when we are back to normal. You know, I was kind of hoping we'd be there by now, but sadly not.
Yeah.
And I think some of this stuff is permanent. You know, I just saw a headline talking about remote work, you know, that for a lot of people, this is going to be in 2 years. And, you know, oh, bosses are worried people aren't going to come back. It's like, why should they? You know,
Right.
in many instances, if you've been successfully working from home now for 18 months, 24 months, what's really the downside of continuing that, you know, indefinitely if that's what people prefer?
Yeah. And you see a lot of big companies have really changed their stance on it. Like,
Yeah,
well, we're going to return to the office once this is over. And a lot of them have said, nope, we don't. Hey, wait, we've actually found out that surprise, surprise, people can govern themselves and
right,
still do their work.
right.
So yeah, that's the exciting part about this to note that like everybody has like been able to adapt to this and still like be more productive in certain situations.
Right. I think it can be really hard to make boundaries and to sort of have that work versus not work. You know, you need some kind of delineator there, you know, but
Yeah,
I just don't see it going back to the way it was in 2019. I don't that ship has
yeah.
sailed.
Like you said, nor should it. So
Well, I think for so many folks, not having a commute is huge, you know. And I think of all the time, like when I've been working remote now almost 5 years, and I can't imagine going back to that daily grind. You know, now I had macro
hmm
doses of commute stress, going to the airport, dealing with delayed flights, things of that nature. I'd much rather take that delayed flight once a
yeah,
month than deal with rush hour traffic, morning, noon, and night,
right.
you know, 5 days a week. No, thank you. So,
Yeah.
you know, I
And I mean, yeah, and it just gives you back so much of your life. You
right,
don't realize that an hour each way is 10 hours a week that
right,
you could be spending with your family
right,
or, going to the gym or going for a
exactly.
run or just getting outside and
Yeah.
doing something. So,
Yeah, I think that's why we're not going to go back to the way things were, you know, and who
yeah,
knows, maybe it'll be 2 days a week, 1 day a week, but I cannot envision an environment where 9 to 5, Monday through Friday is the norm again for, I mean, for some jobs,
right.
sure, but not for the majority of jobs.
Oh, that made me just think of something. Did you see the Gail King interview with Mark Zuckerberg in their kind of 3D augmented
I
world?
heard about it. I didn't see it. It sounded a little, you know, uncanny valley to me, but
So I think this is like the one thing that we're kind of missing though from like
sure.
when it's just you and I talking, I'm staring at you, this is fine.
Right.
But when you're in a group of people and you're just looking at 16 squares, most of the time
Sure.
nobody has their camera on, like you miss that collaboration with people. And so I I'm a big fan of have you read the book Ready Player One?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Or even seen the movie.
Yes,
So
both.
yeah, just being able to like be immersed in like a
Right.
new and like virtual environment, I've often like thought like how would that be? And so I think this is really like the first iteration of it. And it looked really cool. So I'm really hoping to see a lot of progress there. I think the teacher in me really wants to see that because I would
Sure.
love to be able to like get in a room full of people and like talk and like let's interact together.
Right.
And you miss that. You can record a video and have somebody watch that later, but you miss that interactivity and that like, hey, ask me some questions.
Hmm.
And it's just hard when you can't see people. Like people, this teaching is a people thing. It's not a knowledge
Yep.
thing. You have to connect with someone, and so you miss that. So I'm excited for that. Not maybe the first iteration, but maybe what will come in the next like 5 years or so.
Yeah, I could also see the downside of that. Even without the book or movie adaptation, you could
Yeah,
see where that could be abused, and become.
yeah.
I'd rather just live in the Matrix as opposed to be out in the real world. But
How
by
do
the
you know
same
you're
token,
not Snape?
well, yeah, that's true. It could just be a glitch for all I know. But it is going to be very interesting to see how some of that technology evolves. And to your point, I've thought about this a lot over the last year and a half as my son has done a lot of virtual learning. That wouldn't have been an option had this pandemic happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Right, right.
I'm so I think it'll be interesting to see what 10 or 15 or 20 years from now where the technology takes us and what will it be able to do. Oh, I don't know.
Well, we mentioned at the top of this, just how we've seen everything transform over 20 years. I can't even imagine where we'll be 20 years from now, just given my experience of where
Right.
we've been and where we are now. So
Right.
I get excited about that stuff.
Yeah, no, me too. I do think it's going to be very interesting to see. I've thought about that in terms of what piece of technology will Everett have to explain to me at some point, because I know there'll be something where I'll be like, "Oh, come on, Dad, it's not that hard." I'm like, "Oh, I don't understand it, kid." Because I've seen that on the other end where my in-laws were at this soccer scrimmage and my wife spent probably 5 or 10 minutes doing tech support on their phones in various ways, shapes, and forms. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, so I know that'll happen. It's natural.
Yep.
The circle of life. We'll come back to that concept, but
It is.
all right. Well, let me throw a few lightning round questions at you, and then
All right.
we'll declare victory.
Cool.
Coffee, espresso, or tea?
Coffee.
Good
I
man.
have young kids.
Yeah, lots of it. Now, are you a pour over guy, a French press
No,
guy?
I am a Keurig.
Okay,
Throw something in there, put it in a coffee mug. I just need something fast and
give me
good.
the caffeine. All right, all
And
right.
I say good, and I know all the coffee lovers out there going, "Oh, that's not good coffee." But again, I am sometimes operating off 4 hours of sleep. It's the easiest way to get me up in the morning.
Totally understand. Just for the record, my life changed when I got an espresso machine. So
Yeah.
once you get to that point, we'll talk, and I'll
All
help
right.
Sherpa you because it is a whole nother world, my friend. But well worth it.
I'm all for that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It's not as hard as it sounds. So pie or cake?
Ooh, it's a tough one. I'm gonna go cake though.
Okay.
Just had a birthday. Well, I'm gonna throw a hybrid in there. I love ice cream cake.
Yeah.
So,
Nice call. Nice
yeah.
call. See, I
Yep.
love it when people take the question the direction they prefer to go. So by all means, you don't have to be the hobgoblin of just because I gave you two choices. There can be more. How about oceans or mountains?
Oceans for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we went on 2 ocean trips this year. Love being by the ocean, waking up to ocean. I sat on the balcony a couple of nights and just listened to the ocean.
Isn't that
It's
cool?
my calm. It's my
Yeah.
calm, my peace.
Yep. No, I hear that. I hear that. How about a food truck or a Michelin star restaurant? Where are we going to dinner tonight?
Food truck. I
Okay.
mean, got 2 kids.
It's all about speed, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Speed and nobody wants to listen to my kids crying in a 5-star restaurant. So,
My all-time favorite restaurant, I was there, I don't know how many years ago this was now, because again, time has no meaning. And I was blown away that there was a family there with, I believe it was 2 younger kids. I mean, not 1 and 3. They were, 8 and 10 or something in that ballpark. And they were wonderful. They were very well behaved on their manners the whole time. But in the back of my head, I was kind of doing the math, and I'm like, that's a really expensive dinner
right.
for a kid. I don't imagine a world I'm bringing my 14-year-old to core anytime soon. But I don't know. I mean, unless chef would make him, hot dogs or something. But
I'm a big fan of the food truck. That we do have a food truck park near us.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they just they have a schedule, and every day they have different trucks there,
nice.
and you sit outside, and they got the beer garden, so it's a lot of fun to go to. So
See, and people dish on Cleveland. I mean, I'm down for that. I'm down for that.
yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned this one before, but Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings?
Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
but I do love Lord of the Rings, so
yeah,
close second.
yeah. All right, all right. Action, comedy, or drama? that one conscious hour you have before you
Uh,
collapse in a heap.
I'll go comedy
Good call.
because it does kind of lift you out
Uh-huh.
of your whatever you're in, and just kind of laughing's good for you,
Hmm.
especially on long days.
We had that conversation over the weekend. We were going to watch a movie, and I threw out a couple options, and it's like, let's find something funny. Like, okay,
Yep.
let's do that. Let's see. Are you a night owl or a morning person, or does it just not matter because you have young kids?
Used to be a night owl, now I'm a morning person.
There you
So
go.
yeah, well, I'm up at 6 every morning. Have to be. So
You're
I
you're
think I think going forward, I still will be. I
sure.
think I'm more productive this way, anyways. So yeah, I like it. I have no problem with it.
I mean, it
The
makes
the part I have the problem with is getting up in the middle of the night. That part I don't like
yeah, that part's no fun. I
because
don't
then it
miss
throws
that.
you off.
Don't miss that. If it makes you feel any better, their schedules will change and then they will be getting
Yep.
up later. Just as the school schedule flips from, I remember whenever it was younger, school started fairly late, like 9:30 or something, and he'd been up already for like 3 hours. And it's like, why don't we start high school at 9:30 and start the elementary kids at 7? Because they're awake. They're
Right.
ready to roll.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
okay, you do you. How about cats or dogs? As my cat stretches out on my this that can't be comfortable, cat. I don't. Yeah, these cats.
I guess I'm a I guess I'm more of a dog
Okay,
person, but my mom had a bunch of cats, still
okay.
does have a bunch of cats, so I have no problem with cats.
All right. And how about board games or computer games? What would you rather do?
I I'm gonna say I guess computer games. I'm
Okay.
not much of a gamer. I used to be a gamer when I was younger. Like wished for like a Nintendo every year. Finally got the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, and
Mm-hmm.
at some point I just didn't have time for it anymore.
It's it's hard. I mean, I played a lot of console games growing up and even into college and some, when I was younger. The games today are so immersive. The
Yeah,
storylines are so complex. It can be overwhelming to even figure out where to start. And with so many of them having a very strong online content, I
right.
personally, as a middle-aged man, don't enjoy being beaten up on by a 12-year-old, kid. And
Yeah.
so that always gives me a little bit of pause. Like, I don't really want to get in the middle of this. So
Yeah, and then then you're in your they're in your ear talking crap to you.
yeah, it's like, is there
Gonna
just
pass
like
your
a
bedtime.
right, or okay, yeah, is there just like a campaign mode I can use? Now that said, I've enjoyed playing a lot of like FIFA with my son or various Star Wars incarnations with him. So, but it is
I
harder to justify it as you get older.
the nostalgic in me still loves all like if I were to get anything, I would get the Switch because I love
Yeah,
Zelda is one of my favorite games of all
yeah.
time. Mario Karts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mario's, Metroids, those kind of games
Right,
are
right.
always near and dear to me. So
100%. Yeah, the kids don't get it. I mean, it is amazing how immersive games are versus what things used to look like. And I've had to explain to my son sometimes, like, yeah, we didn't have this. It just went one way, and you could jump, and that was it. And you didn't have R2 and R1 and R3 and this button. And it's like, where's the option button? It's like, Dad, it's there. I'm like, I had two buttons and a D-pad. Like, come on, cut me some slack. So
I
yeah.
know.
Oh well. Well, Dan, I could keep chatting with you, but we're over at this point because, of course, that's how this rolls. We didn't talk about food as much as I would have thought, but at least we did graze by Michigan football a little bit. So I'm sure once again the Buckeyes will dominate the big whatever we call it now, and it's probably fine. So,
I think so.
but I'm curious to see how Urban Meyer does in Florida.
Uh,
Coaching the big kids. It'd be interesting.
I'll throw out a quick. I'm gonna say that he'll last this year, and
Hmm.
that's it. I
Yeah.
don't think he'll make it past year two. He just doesn't seem like a teaching grown men how to play. He is much
Right.
more of a I want to be a teacher, and the recruiter in him.
Yeah.
I just I hope he does well. I'm a bigger Meyer fan, but I just don't see him lasting there. We'll see though. He's got a really good quarterback, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting. I do feel like this is a Nick Saban redo. Whether or not he goes back to college, I guess, is an interesting question. Maybe he just, rides off in the sunset and counts his money. But Yeah, I think it'll be interesting.
I'm always going to thank him for hiring Ryan Day, because Ryan Day has been awesome.
Yeah,
Great coach at Ohio State.
yeah,
So,
yeah. There you go. Well, thank you, my friend. I look forward to seeing you at Spring One next week. I'm excited about that, and I appreciate you hanging out with me. And you know, I'll circle back on some of the things we chatted about in the pre-show.
all
I
right.
should start recording the pre-show because that seems to be, you know, at least half the fun, half the time of just seeing where that gets us. But and I think Twitch glitched on me a few times, so hopefully my recording actually worked today. Fingers crossed.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Well,
this
no, thanks for having me on. Really big fan of the podcast. I've been tuning in here and just enjoy the conversations with different people and just different backgrounds, and kind of hearing everybody's thoughts on software architecture, and then all the other stuff we get to talk about. So I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to the next episode we get to do together.
well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind words. This has been a lot of fun for me too, just to get an excuse to hang out with people at least once a week and talk about something that isn't all just tech all the time. You know, it's nice
Right.
to be able to delve into some of these other topics, and so I appreciate you being a victim today.
Cool. No problem.
I will be back next week with Baruch. I hope. I think that's the plan. We'll find out. And until then, everybody have a great week. Cheers.